Welcome to Kindle English Podcast, your cozy space to learn, grow, and speak confidently.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to Kindle English Podcast right here on YouTube. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, I need to start with something today because this topic has been living in my brain for days. Food culture in the US, the UK, and Australia is so different that it can actually shock you, like genuinely shock you. We're not just talking about different dishes, we're talking about completely different relationships with food.
You're not exaggerating either. I remember the first time I sat down to eat in Australia after spending years going back and forth between the US and the UK, and I was like, wait, why is everything here so fresh? Like aggressively fresh. The avocado was practically still talking to me.
Still talking to you. Finn, that's so dramatic. But you know what? You're not wrong. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. The delicious, surprising, sometimes confusing differences in how Americans, Brits, and Australians think about food, eat food, talk about food, and honestly, argue about food.
Oh, the arguments about food. I've seen friendships tested over whether a scone is pronounced scone or scone. I've seen families divided over whether you put cream or jam first.
We are absolutely getting into that today. But first, if you're new here, welcome to Kindle English Podcast. Finn and I have conversations just like this every week. Real, natural English conversations about culture, life, travel, food, all of it. And the goal is that you pick up real English the way it's actually spoken, not textbook English, real English.
And hey, if you're enjoying this, do us a solid and hit that subscribe button. Share this episode with a friend who loves food, or who's learning English, or, ideally both. It really helps us keep making these for you.
It truly does. Okay, so Finn, I want to start with something big. When you think about American food culture versus British food culture versus Australian food culture, what's the first difference that jumps out to you?
Honestly, portion size. I think the portion sizes in America are just on a completely different level compared to the UK and Australia. The first time I ordered a meal in Texas, I thought they'd brought food for 3 people. I looked around for the other 2 guests.
Portion size. That's such a perfect place to start. And for anyone listening, portion size just means how much food you get served in one plate or one meal. And yeah, in the US, portions tend to be significantly larger than what you'd get in the UK or Australia.
Significantly. We're talking like double, sometimes more. And the thing is, Americans don't think it's a lot. That's just normal Tuesday dinner.
Right. And in the UK, if someone gave you that same plate, you'd think it was a sharing platter for the table. It's a genuine cultural difference, not a judgment call. It's just how the food culture evolved differently.
Do you think that comes from the whole American abundance mentality? Like the idea that bigger is better?
I think it's partly that, yeah. There's a whole history there around agriculture, around post-war prosperity, around the idea that generosity is shown through how much food you put on the table. It's actually really fascinating when you dig into it.
Okay, can we talk about breakfast? Because I think breakfast is where these 3 countries are the most different, and it's the meal that confuses international visitors the most.
Oh, 100%. Let's start with the UK because the full English breakfast is legendary. We're talking eggs, bacon, sausages, baked beans, toast, grilled tomatoes, mushrooms, and sometimes black pudding. It's a whole production.
It's a culinary event, honestly. And I love that word culinary. It just means related to cooking or food. So when we say something is a culinary event, we mean it's a real food experience, not just eating to survive.
Exactly. And the full English is definitely a culinary experience. It's heavy, it's savory, and notice I'm saying savory with a U because that's how they spell it in the UK and Australia, S-A-V-O-U-R-Y. In America, they drop the U and spell it S-A-V-O-R-Y.
Same word, same meaning. Something that's not sweet, something salty or rich or meaty, just different spellings depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on, or which side of the Pacific, I guess, since Australia follows the British spelling.
Right, so savory breakfast is the default in the UK. That full English, or fry-up as they sometimes call it, is this beloved tradition. Now compare that to the US.
Oh, American breakfast. Okay, so here's the thing about American breakfast. They can go sweet
or savory, and often they go both at the same time. Pancakes with syrup and bacon, waffles with fried chicken, French toast dripping in maple syrup next to scrambled eggs. It's wild.
The sweet and savory combination is so American. In the UK, if you put syrup on something and then ate it with bacon, people would look at you like you'd lost your mind.
They really would. My British friend literally gagged when I told her about chicken and waffles. She was like, "That's not a meal, that's a cry for help."
They really would. My British friend literally gagged when I told her about chicken and waffles. She was like, "That's not a meal, that's a cry for help." Oh no. But see, that's a perfect example of how your palate, your sense of taste basically, is shaped by your culture. The word palate, P-A-L-A-T-E, refers to your ability to taste and appreciate different flavors. So an American palate is trained to enjoy sweet and savory together, whereas a British palate tends to keep them very separate.
That's so true. And your palate really is something that develops over time based on what you grow up eating. What about Australia, though? Where do they fall on the breakfast spectrum?
Australia is its own universe when it comes to breakfast. This is where we need to talk about brunch culture, because Australia, and especially cities like Melbourne and Sydney, basically invented modern brunch culture as we know it.
You think so? I mean, brunch exists everywhere now, but you're saying Australia did it first?
Australia took brunch and turned it into an art form. We're talking smashed avocado on sourdough, poached eggs with hollandaise, acai bowls, halloumi, things with beetroot and dukkha and microgreens. The Australian brunch menu reads like a gastronomic adventure.
Gastronomic. That's a big word. Break that down for me, Hazel.
Gastronomic basically means related to the art of good eating. It comes from gastronomy, which is the study or practice of cooking and eating good food. So when I say Australian brunch is a gastronomic adventure, I mean it's elevated, thoughtful, creative food, not just throwing eggs on a plate.
I remember sitting in this tiny cafe in Melbourne, and the menu had like 30 brunch options, and every single one sounded like something a chef had spent weeks perfecting. Meanwhile, the last brunch I had in London was beans on toast, which, look, I love beans on toast, but it's not exactly gastronomic.
Finn, beans on toast has its charm.
Sure, if by charm you mean it costs about £1.50 and takes 90 seconds to make.
You know what, though? That's actually part of British food culture that I find really endearing. There's this comfort food tradition that's very unpretentious. Beans on toast, a chip buddy, which is literally a French fry sandwich for any Americans listening, cheese on toast. It's food that makes you feel warm and safe, and it doesn't need to be fancy.
Comfort food. I love that term. And yeah, comfort food is exactly what it sounds like. Food that makes you feel comforted, like a hug from the inside. Every culture has it, but the specific dishes are so different. In the US, comfort food might be mac and cheese, fried chicken, meatloaf. In the UK, it's shepherd's pie, fish and chips, a Sunday roast. In Australia, it might be a meat pie or a sausage roll or a big bowl of pavlova for dessert.
And there's something really beautiful about that, right? That every culture has these foods that they bring you back to childhood. They make you feel at home, no matter where you are in the world.
Hazel, can I ask you something kind of random? Do you think Americans have a bigger sweet tooth than Brits and Australians?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question. And by the way, for anyone who hasn't heard that expression, to have a sweet tooth means you really love sweet food. Sugar, desserts, candy, chocolate, all of it. If someone says, "Oh, she's got a real sweet tooth," they mean that person loves anything sugary.
Right. And I ask because, like, American bread is sweeter than British bread. American peanut butter is sweeter. Even American tomato sauce, ketchup, is noticeably sweeter. It's like sugar is just embedded in the American food system at a level that the UK and Australia haven't quite reached.
You're not wrong, and this is actually something that surprises a lot of British and Australian visitors to the US. They'll bite into a loaf of what they think is normal bread and go, "Why does this taste like cake?" Because in the UK and Australia, sandwich bread tends to be much less sweet.
I had a British colleague once who said American white bread tasted like dessert bread, and she refused to eat it. She started buying her bread from a local bakery because the supermarket stuff was just too sweet for her palate.
See, there's palate again. Her palate was trained on British bread, which is less sweet, so the American version was overwhelming. It's all about what you're used to.
But do you think that means Americans have a bigger sweet tooth? Or is it more that the food industry in America just puts sugar in everything regardless of whether people actually wanted that sweet?
I think it's honestly a bit of both. There's definitely a cultural preference for sweeter flavors in the US, but there's also a whole food industry side of it, where sugar is added to products for preservation, for flavor enhancement, for all sorts of reasons that aren't really about consumer preference. It's a complex thing.
Yeah. And in Australia, there's been this huge push toward health-conscious eating in the last 15, 20 years. The food scene there feels very aware. Like people care about where their food comes from, how it's grown, what's in it.
That whole farm-to-table movement has really taken hold in Australia. And Finn, that's a great phrase for our listeners. Farm-to-table. It means food that goes directly from the farm where it's grown to the table where you eat it, with as few steps in between as possible. So no big factories, no processing plants, no long supply chains, just fresh, local food from nearby farms.
And you see that term a lot now on restaurant menus, especially in the US and Australia. A restaurant might advertise itself as a farm-to-table restaurant, which means they source their ingredients locally and seasonally.
Exactly. And while the UK has always had farmers markets and a strong tradition of local produce, the farm-to-table branding really exploded in the US and Australia first, and then kind of spread everywhere.
You know what Australia also does that I find fascinating? They put beetroot on burgers. Like, it's just a standard burger topping there. Beetroot on a burger.
Yes, the classic Aussie burger. Beef patty, beetroot, fried egg, lettuce, tomato, pineapple sometimes. It's a smorgasbord of flavors.
Oh, smorgasbord. That's a fun one. Okay, so smorgasbord originally comes from Swedish, but in English we use it to mean a wide variety of things, like the big diverse mixture. So a smorgasbord of flavors means there are loads of different tastes all happening at once.
Exactly. And that Aussie burger is truly a smorgasbord. You've got the sweet from the beetroot and pineapple, the savory from the beef and egg, the fresh from the lettuce and tomato. It's everything at once.
I'm gonna be honest though. The first time someone put a slice of beetroot on my burger, I was suspicious. I was like, is this a prank? Is someone filming me right now?
Were you?
I took one bite. And I was like, okay, this actually works. The sweetness of the beetroot with the salty beef and the runny egg yolk, it's incredible. But it was definitely an acquired taste.
And that is a perfect use of that phrase. An acquired taste is something that you don't like the first time you try it, but over time you grow to appreciate it or even love it. Beer is an acquired taste for a lot of people. Blue cheese is an acquired taste. And apparently, beetroot on burgers is an acquired taste for non-Australians.
Chuckling, guilty as charged.
Okay, I want to shift to something that I think catches a lot of people off guard when they travel between these three countries. And that's the whole restaurant experience. Because eating out in America versus the UK versus Australia, it's like three completely different social contracts.
What do you mean by that? Like the service is different?
The service is wildly different. In America, when you go to a restaurant, your server is going to be very attentive. They'll come by your table multiple times. How's everything tasting? Can I get you anything else? How are we doing over here? It's very hands-on, very friendly, very present.
Almost aggressively friendly sometimes. I've had servers in America who I felt like I was developing a personal relationship with by the end of the meal. They knew my name, they knew my life story, they were recommending things based on my personality.
And there's a reason for that, right? In the US, servers rely heavily on tips. The tipping culture in America is a huge part of the dining experience. You're expected to tip 15 to 20%, sometimes more. And because of that, servers are incredibly motivated to give you a great experience.
Which is a whole cultural thing that confuses Brits and Australians endlessly. In the UK, tipping exists, but it's much more relaxed, maybe 10%, and it's not always expected. And in Australia, tipping is basically optional. Like, you can tip if the service was amazing, but nobody's going to give you a dirty look if you don't.
And that creates a completely different vibe, doesn't it? In Australian restaurants and cafes, the service is friendly but more laid back. Your server isn't checking on you every 5 minutes because they don't need to earn a tip. They're paid a fair wage already.
Right. And in the UK, the service can be anywhere from wonderfully warm to hilariously deadpan. I've had servers in British pubs who communicated entirely through eyebrow movements, and I still had a great time.
That is such a British thing, the understated service. You don't need someone asking you 20 questions. You just need your food to arrive and your glass to not be empty.
And speaking of pubs, can we talk about the gastropub phenomenon? Because that's something that really started in the UK, and I think it's brilliant.
Oh, yes. So a gastropub, and this is a term I think our listeners should know. A gastropub is a pub that serves really high-quality food.
It's a combination of gastronomy, which we talked about earlier, and pub. So you get the cozy, casual atmosphere of a traditional British pub, but the food is elevated, creative, sometimes even award-winning.
And they've spread everywhere now. You'll find gastropubs in Australia, in the US, even across Europe. But the concept really came from Britain in the 90s, when chefs started thinking, why can't pub food be really, really good?
And now you've got gastropubs in London serving things like slow-braised lamb shank with truffle mash and a red wine jus, alongside a perfectly poured pint of ale. It's this beautiful marriage of casual and refined.
I remember this gastropub in Notting Hill, where I had the best Sunday roast of my entire life. Like, I still think about that Yorkshire pudding. It haunts me in the best way.
Food nostalgia is real, Finn.
It's so real. But okay, Hazel, I want to do a little role play here, because I think the restaurant experience is something our listeners might actually encounter in real life. Like, ordering food in English can be stressful if you're not sure of the customs.
Oh, I love this idea. Okay, let's do it. Finn, you be the server. Let's say we're in an American restaurant.
Hi there, welcome in, folks. Can I start you off with something to drink?
Yeah, could I just get a water for now? And actually, do you have any specials today?
We sure do. Tonight, our chef has prepared a pan-seared salmon with a lemon dill sauce, served with roasted seasonal vegetables. It comes with your choice of a side salad or our soup of the day.
Ooh, that sounds great. What's the soup?
It's a butternut squash bisque. Really creamy, really good.
I'll go with the salmon and the soup, please.
Awesome choice. I'll get that right in for you. See? That's a typical American restaurant exchange. Notice how the server is super warm, uses phrases like welcome in, start you off with, awesome choice. Those are very American server phrases.
And if you were in the UK, the same interaction might sound a bit different. The server might say, hiya, what can I get you? Or just, ready to order? It's a bit more direct, a bit less performative, but still perfectly friendly.
And in Australia, your server might just say, hey, how you going? What'll it be? Very casual, very relaxed. No script, no performance, just a genuine human being taking your order.
I'd love to know which style you guys prefer. Drop a comment below. American super friendly, British understated, or Australian laid back. I'm genuinely curious.
You know what I think is really telling about a country's food culture? Their staple foods, like the things people eat every single day without even thinking about it.
Oh, staple foods. Yes, and that's an important term. A staple food is a food that forms the basic, fundamental part of a diet. It's something that a culture eats regularly, consistently, as a foundation. Rice is a staple food in many Asian countries. Bread is a staple in much of Europe. Tortillas are a staple in Mexico.
Right. And when you compare the staple foods of the US, UK, and Australia, you start to see these really interesting patterns. Like in America, I'd say the staples are things like bread, corn in various forms, potatoes, beef, and cheese. Americans consume an incredible amount of cheese.
An incredible amount of cheese. There are statistics on this that are genuinely mind-blowing. Americans eat something like 40 pounds of cheese per person per year.
40 pounds! That's like 18 kilograms for anyone thinking in metric. That's a lot of cheese, Hazel.
It is a lot of cheese, and it makes sense when you think about it. Cheese on burgers, cheese on pizza, cheese in sandwiches, mac and cheese, nachos with cheese steak, cheese fries, grilled cheese sandwiches. Cheese is everywhere in American food culture.
Meanwhile, in the UK, the staples are a bit different. Tea, obviously. Tea is basically a national staple food at this point, but also things like potatoes, bread, baked beans, and a much wider variety of meats. Brits eat a lot of lamb, which is less common as a daily staple in the US.
And sausages. The British love their sausages, bangers as they're called, with mash, bangers and mash. It's such a classic comfort food dish.
Bangers and mash with onion gravy on a cold winter evening? That's happiness in a bowl. What about Australia, though? What are their staple foods?
Australia is interesting because it's this mix of British colonial food heritage and then this massive Asian and Mediterranean influence from immigration. So the staples include things like lamb. Australians eat more lamb per capita than almost anyone, plus seafood because obviously they're surrounded by ocean. Prawns, barramundi, fish in general. And then you've got Vegemite, which is like the ultimate Australian staple.
Vegemite. Okay, we need to talk about Vegemite because this is one of those things that is deeply, truly, profoundly an acquired taste.
There it is again, acquired taste.
I have tried Vegemite 3 times in my life, and every single time my face has done a thing, like my whole face rejects it. It's this thick, dark brown paste made from yeast extract, and it is intensely salty and savory. Australians spread it on toast, and they love it. They put it on everything. It's iconic there.
And the key mistake that non-Australians make is they spread it on thick, like peanut butter or Nutella. No, you're supposed to use the tiniest amount on buttered toast. The butter is important. It mellows out the intensity.
See, I was told this after I'd already put a tablespoon of it on dry toast and taken a massive bite. Nobody warned me. I think my Australian friends did it on purpose for their own entertainment.
They definitely did. That's practically an Australian national sport, watching foreigners try Vegemite incorrectly.
And you know what? The British have their version, Marmite. Same concept, slightly different flavor. And their whole marketing campaign is literally you either love it or you hate it, which is the most honest advertising I've ever seen.
It really is. And both Vegemite and Marmite are perfect examples of how a food can be a beloved staple in one country and completely baffling in another. Your palate, your taste memory, your cultural background, all of it shapes whether you find something delicious or disgusting.
Hazel, when did we all become foodies? Like, when did that happen? Because I feel like 20 years ago, nobody taught themselves a foodie, and now everyone is one.
That's such a good observation. So the word foodie, for anyone who hasn't encountered it, a foodie is a person who has a deep, passionate interest in food. Not just eating, but exploring new cuisines, understanding cooking techniques, seeking out interesting restaurants, caring about ingredients. A foodie is someone who doesn't just eat to live, they live to eat.
And I feel like social media really accelerated the whole foodie culture, Instagram especially. Suddenly, everyone was photographing their meals and talking about flavor profiles and umami notes. And I'm sitting there thinking, it's a sandwich, Dave.
Oh, Finn, but you're right. Social media has played a huge role, and it's affected all three countries differently. In the US, the foodie movement brought this explosion of food trucks, pop-up restaurants, celebrity chefs, competitive cooking shows. It became entertainment.
The food truck scene in America is unbelievable. Cities like Los Angeles, Portland, Austin, you can eat food from 20 different countries in a single block just by walking from truck to truck. Korean tacos, Ethiopian wraps, Filipino barbecue, lobster rolls from a van. It's a smorgasbord of global flavors.
There's smorgasbord again, and it really is. The US food truck scene represents this incredible diversity of culinary traditions all colliding in one place.
Whereas in the UK, the foodie revolution took a slightly different path. It was more about elevating British food. For decades, British food had this reputation, and honestly, not an entirely unfair one, of being bland, overcooked, and boring. Remember the stereotype? Boiled vegetables, gray meat, no spices.
I mean, some of that stereotype was earned. But what happened in the UK, especially from the 90s onward, was this incredible culinary renaissance. Chefs like Jamie Oliver, Gordon Ramsay, Nigella Lawson, they made British people excited about cooking again. They took traditional British dishes and modernized them, and they also embraced flavors from Britain's multicultural communities.
And that is such an important point. British food culture now is deeply influenced by South Asian, Caribbean, Chinese, and Middle Eastern cuisines because of the UK's history of immigration. Chicken tikka masala is literally considered a national dish. Think about that. An Indian-inspired curry is one of the most beloved dishes in Britain.
It's a beautiful example of how food culture evolves and absorbs influences from everywhere. And in Australia, the same thing happened with Asian cuisines. Thai, Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese. Melbourne has some of the best Vietnamese food outside of Vietnam.
That's what I've heard. The pho in Melbourne is apparently life-changing.
It genuinely is. And this all ties back to something I think is really special about food. It's one of the most powerful bridges between cultures. You might not speak someone's language, but you can share a meal with them and connect on this totally human level.
That's really beautifully put, Hazel. And for our listeners who are learning English in different countries around the world, food is actually one of the best topics to practice conversational English with. Everyone has opinions about food. Everyone has stories about food. If you're ever stuck for something to talk about in English, just ask someone what their favorite comfort food is, and you'll have a conversation for an hour.
That is genuinely great advice. Tell us in the comments, what's your comfort food? We'd love to know. What's the dish that makes you feel like you're home?
You know what that food conversation reminds me of? Something I've noticed that's actually kind of deep. The emotional relationship with food is really different in these three countries. Like the guilt factor.
The guilt factor. Tell me more.
Okay, so in America, there's this very strong diet culture, right? There's always some new diet trend. Keto, paleo, juice cleanses, intermittent fasting, whatever's hot that month. And alongside that, there's this concept of cheat meals or guilty pleasures when it comes to food. Like eating something indulgent is framed as being bad, and you have to earn it or feel guilty about it.
And indulgent is such a key word here. Something that's indulgent is something that gives you pleasure in a way that feels luxurious or maybe excessive. An indulgent dessert is a rich, decadent chocolate cake. An indulgent meal is one where you go all out and don't hold back. But the word itself has this subtle implication that you're doing something you maybe shouldn't be.
Which I think is kind of a shame, honestly, because food should be joyful, not stressful. And I feel like in Australia and parts of Europe, there's a healthier attitude where you can enjoy an indulgent meal without the guilt spiral.
I think you're onto something, Finn. In Australia, there's definitely this balance of eating well and living well. Australians are very active, beach culture, outdoor lifestyle, and they tend to eat fresh, healthy food as a default. So when they have something indulgent, like a big brunch with halloumi and bacon and a side of banana bread, it doesn't carry all that emotional baggage.
Meanwhile, in Britain, the attitude is more like, life is short, have the pudding. There's a kind of pragmatic acceptance of indulgent food that I really admire. Sunday roasts, afternoon teas with scones and clotted cream, fish and chips on a Friday. These are rituals, not guilt trips.
I love that framing. Food as ritual rather than food as moral judgment. And honestly, I think this is something that English learners pick up when they live in these countries. Not just the language of food, but the emotional language around food. How people talk about what they eat reveals so much about a culture.
That's actually a really profound point. The vocabulary of food guilt is very American. Cheat day, clean eating, guilty pleasure. Whereas in Australia, you're more likely to hear people talk about food in terms of enjoyment and balance. And in the UK, food talk often comes back to tradition and occasion.
And here's the thing. When you're learning English and you're engaging with these cultures, understanding these subtle emotional frameworks helps you communicate more naturally. If you're talking to an American friend about food, the conversation might involve words like healthy, cool, macro-friendly. If you're talking to a British friend, it might be more about having a proper meal or treating yourself. If you're talking to an Australian, it might be about fresh, local, seasonal.
Same language, very different vibes.
Exactly that. Same language, different culinary cultures, different emotional landscapes around food.
Okay, Hazel. I have a question that has plagued me for years. In Britain, when someone says tea, do they mean tea, like the drink? Or do they mean dinner? Because I have been confused by this more times than I can count.
Oh, this is one of the most confusing things about British English, and it trips up Americans and Australians and literally everyone who isn't from the specific part of Britain where the word is being used.
Because someone once said to me, "Come round for tea at 6," and I showed up expecting like a cup of tea and maybe a biscuit, and there was a full roast chicken dinner on the table. I was completely blindsided.
Oh, okay, so here's how it works. And it's actually a fascinating example of regional language variation within a single country. In many parts of the north of England, Scotland, and some working class communities across the UK, tea means your evening meal, dinner, the main meal of the day that you eat around 5 or 6 o'clock.
So when they say, "What's for tea?" they're asking what's for dinner.
Exactly. What's for tea tonight means what are we having for dinner? But then, in the south of England and in more middle class or upper class contexts, tea means the drink, or sometimes afternoon tea, which is that beautiful tradition of tea with sandwiches and scones in the afternoon around 3 or 4 o'clock.
So the same word, 3 letters, T-E-A, can mean a hot drink, a light afternoon snack, or a full evening meal, depending on where you are and who you're talking to.
Welcome to English, Finn, where nothing is simple and everything depends on context.
This language, I swear. And Americans don't help because in the US, tea is just tea. It's a drink. That's it. There's no confusion. You want the meal? It's called dinner or supper, depending on where you are.
Well, supper is another whole can of worms because in some parts of the US, supper and dinner are different meals. Dinner is the big midday meal and supper is the lighter evening meal. But in most of modern America, dinner and supper mean the same thing, the evening meal.
And in Australia?
In Australia, the evening meal is usually called dinner or sometimes tea, especially in more rural or traditional Australian families. So there's a bit of that British influence lingering.
It's like the whole English-speaking world decided to make meal names as confusing as possible.
It keeps things interesting, Finn.
And honestly, this is the kind of thing that you can't learn from a textbook. You learn it by being part of the culture, by having conversations, by experiencing these little moments of confusion and then having the light bulb go off. That's real language learning.
If you've ever had a moment like that, where a simple word completely confused you because of cultural context, share it in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories. I bet you guys have some hilarious ones.
Okay, we've covered so much ground today, Finn. We've gone from breakfast to dinner, or tea, depending on where you're from, and everywhere in between.
We really have. And I feel like the biggest takeaway for me is just how much variety exists within an English-speaking world when it comes to food. Like, you've got this whole spectrum from the indulgent American portion sizes to the refined gastropub scene in the UK to the fresh farm-to-table brunch culture in Australia. It's all English-speaking, but the food cultures are worlds apart.
And the language around food is just as diverse. We've talked about so many great terms today, things like palate and how your palate is shaped by your culture, the idea of acquired taste, which is something you learn to love over time, comfort food, which is that warm, nostalgic category of dishes that make you feel at home.
And don't forget the concept of being a foodie, which is basically all of us at this point, and the farm-to-table movement and the whole gastropub from Mermanon. Honestly, I feel like I need to eat after this conversation. I'm genuinely hungry.
Me too. We've been talking about food for how long now? And I haven't eaten since this morning. But you know what? I think the thing I love most about this topic is that food is universal. No matter where you're from, no matter what language you speak, food is how we connect with each other. It's how we show love, celebrate, comfort each other, and share our cultures.
That's so true. And if you're an English learner listening to this, I hope today's conversation has given you some new vocabulary, but also some new cultural understanding. Because when you sit down to eat with someone from the US, the UK, or Australia, you're not just sharing a meal, you're entering their whole food culture, their traditions, their memories.
And that's a really special thing. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today on Kindle English Podcast. Honestly, it means the world that you choose to spend your time here with us. And I hope you walk away from this episode feeling like your English vocabulary just got a little bit richer.
And a little hungrier. But seriously, if you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button, drop us a like, and share this with someone who'd enjoy it. It helps us so much, and it means we can keep making episodes like this one for you.
Leave a comment telling us what food shocked you when you travel to a new country, or tell us your favorite comfort food. We genuinely read every single comment, and it makes our day.
And if anyone wants to settle the scone debate, is it scone or scone? Drop that in the comments too. I have opinions, and I'm not afraid to use them.
Oh, Finn. We'll see you in the next episode, everyone. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep eating delicious food from around the world.
And remember, if someone in England invites you for tea at 6 o'clock, eat before you go. Or don't. You might get a whole roast dinner. It's a gamble. See you next time.